All right. Hi, Hope. I'm super excited to be here and to be chatting with you and to hear your amazing story. I have been noticing your story for a while now, and I'm just really excited that we're finally getting a chance to kind of hop on a call and share all the amazing things that you've been able to accomplish in such a short amount of time. So, if you want to just kind of walk us through what was going on before, and then what brought you to kind of join Write Your Way to Freedom, and then all the way up until where you are right now, and I'll just ask you questions all along the way.
All right. Well,
So
first of all, thank you for having me.
yeah.
I absolutely love being a part of this group. So I'm gonna start, and I might backtrack a little because it's hard to really, talk about everything at one time. But I
Mm-hmm.
know I'm gonna start where I was whenever I found Write Your Way to Freedom. So
Okay.
at the time I was working, and I was a leader in a nationwide organization that covered all of Central and South Florida. And I loved my job, loved
Mm-hmm.
the organization, the team. They were like family, really. And I know a lot of people don't feel that way, but I really did feel that way. So I loved to do what we do. We worked with at-risk youth and families to give them second chances, to really help them overcome barriers and obstacles in their lives. So it was a worthwhile cause. Um, but it was a lot of work. So, I was, I guess, what you would consider a workaholic. I always worked my way up to levels of promotion. And what that requires is typically a lot of hours before the clock, after the clock, weekends, um, really not paying attention to the clock, just paying attention to the work that needs to get done. And that
Mm-hmm.
was fine until I got married. And
Mm-hmm.
so when my husband and I were dating, he didn't really see all the work and all the hours. But after we got married is when he really saw all the time that was being put in, the calls and the text and the emails in the morning and the night and the weekend. And it really put a lot of tension in our marriage, to where it came to a point where I felt kind of like I was trying my best to be the best employee and the best wife. And I felt like I was having to really kind of choose which one I wanted to be.
Mm-hmm.
And, one Sunday, and I remember this because I was in the middle of major projects and we had just gotten home from church, and my email and my phone was going off, and I was trying to take calls, and I had all of this work to do. And we got in an argument, and I was just kind of to the end of my rope, and I laid on the couch, and I'm like, God, there's got to be something else. This is not the way the rest of my life is intended to be lived. And I literally, you are literally an answered prayer. I don't know what you believe, but you're my answered prayer. Okay. So I opened my phone. I opened Facebook because, what do you do when you want to avoid things? You scroll Facebook. So the first thing I saw was a sponsored ad that said, Write Your Way to Freedom. And I thought, huh, let me check this out. So I think it was your masterclass.
Mm-hmm.
So I did, signed up, listened in, Googled you, made sure you were real, not AI. um, I went on YouTube, watched every video, and I actually emailed you. And to
Uh,
my surprise, you emailed back. Actually,
uh,
I emailed you twice, and you emailed back twice.
I
And
remember.
I did all of my homework before I went to my husband, and I said, listen, this is an investment. I think we can do this, financially. But what do you think? Because I did want to make sure it was something he was into. It wasn't, it was a financial investment that I wanted to make sure he was okay with. And so he agreed. He thought I could do it. And so I went ahead and signed up for the class. Now, a little background is this: my job, the contract was going to be up in within the year, a little over a year.
Oh, yeah. I didn't know
And
that.
so, and I live in a tiny little town. And if anybody here lives in small towns, you know that the job opportunities are pretty scarce, especially ones that bring in any kind of income that's going to actually pay the bills.
Yep.
So I thought I've got to do something or I'm going to have to end up traveling an hour to 2 hours, just to
Mm.
get a job if this contract doesn't end. So, I thought, well, this was good because I can do copywriting and I can do it on the side if the contract extends, or if it doesn't extend, then while I get unemployment for our job that goes out of business, then I can just do copywriting and build that. So that was the plan. And that's where I started actually 2 years ago in October.
Oh, wow. So 2 years, you're coming up on your anniversary.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I want to say this time 2 years ago, I was researching, but then
That's
I actually started in October.
right. That's wild. Okay. So now bring us up to like what happened in those 2 years. A lot, especially in that first month. Very
So
impressive.
a lot has gone on. So that first month, I decided if I'm going to put it, I'm kind of a put if I'm going to put money down on it, then I'm going to take action.
Hmm.
So as soon as I could, literally, I just started going through the course. So I'd get up early, stay up late, just kind of immersed myself in the course.
Hmm.
And not just the course. If something was covered in the course and I wanted to explore it more, then I did research. I, watched all of your YouTube videos. I have a whole notebook where I just took notes all about everything in your course. Basically, I probably wrote it all out in a notebook somewhere.
Hmm.
Um, so I did that. And while I was working through the course, I was also setting up my website, getting my LLC, getting the bank account, um, and then also doing client acquisition. So I didn't wait to do client acquisition. I just kind of dove in, and
Hmm.
I figured, well, if I get a discovery call, then that will force me to do more homework and be ready and be prepared. And if I get a client, that's going to force me to be ready to write that copy.
Yep.
So that's what I did. So within the first month, I had all of that set up and had been able to complete at least 3 discovery calls. I know 3 for a fact because I can remember 3. And then
Easy.
I ended up landing my first client that actually paid for the course in the first
What?
month.
In the first month? That's
Yeah.
amazing. One thing that also stood out to me in when you were telling me a little bit about this first month is that you also took some of your previous writing and turned it into copy.
Oh, I
Can you
forgot
tell us
about
a little
that.
bit about
So
that?
I didn't want to just start over with trying to come up with new copy. So any journal entries or anything I had written for like little Bible studies or really anything I thought I could turn into a blog, I
Yeah.
just went through it fast, threw some SEO in there and popped it up on my website, to give me some credibility.
Nice.
So with,
And
with the idea, yeah, with the idea that I could go back and fix it later, you know,
yeah.
um, but it gave me a little bit of a running start.
Yeah, that's amazing. I really love that. I love, anytime we kind of like make non-negotiables in our head and we're like, I'm just going to get this done. And you didn't really leave a lot of space for overthinking or perfectionism easily, even you were just like, I'm just going to get it done. And you gave yourself permission to learn as you go, which is really important because as I'm always saying, like, this is not a test with a proctor where you can't like use the internet for resources as you're creating things. So I really, really love that. Do you want to, and then so you kind of fast forward, I think about a year to August, 2022. And then you went full time as an entrepreneur, right? You want to tell
Well,
us about that?
well, I set small goals for myself. So in a big part of what your class did for me was, after that first client in November and December, we were trying to buy our first home.
Mm,
So not only did that first client pay for the course, it also paid for all of our moving expenses because we ended up getting approved. And then we had like a week to move. So, I just kind of really focused on moving, but it paid all of those moving expenses that you don't think about until you have to move. Um,
right.
So that's what I did at the end of 2021, was really focus on moving and getting situated. So I only had time for that one client in my regular job. But in January, sometime mid-January, I set some goals
Mm-hmm.
for where I wanted to go with copywriting.
Mm-hmm.
One was I just wanted to make $1,000 consistently a month. That was my first goal.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I guess my first goal was getting a client, and I did that. So my second goal was to make $1,000 consistently, and I kept setting small goals. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and then it was to make half of my income consistently. When I
Mm-hmm.
did that, I thought, well, the next step is to meet my income consistently. And to my surprise, by sometime in March, which wasn't very long, it felt like a long time, but only a few months later, I was making and matching my corporate income. So
Nice.
at that point, I thought, okay, well, I can put in my notice now. But they kind of begged me to stay on. So I stayed on several months, and then officially August 2022 stepped out to full-time entrepreneurship.
That is amazing. And another thing that I love about your story so much, and a part of kind of what we're focusing on in the most recent like student success stories, is how really truly like the point of Write Your Way to Freedom and our philosophy is to create the life that we want. And so I know you've taken copywriting and your other skill sets to kind of create your own version of your business, entrepreneurship, and really make it work for you. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yes, and I loved your email the other day that something new is coming to Write Your Way to Freedom. So I'm excited about that. And everybody on here should be too. And that kind of speaks to what I'm going to talk about. With Write Your Way to Freedom, it taught me more than just copywriting, and not just Write Your Way to Freedom, but these calls, the success stories, your videos. Um, it taught me that I can set a goal and reach it. And when I say goal, I mean goal outside of an employee goal. You know,
Mm-hmm.
we're taught our whole lives, if you're just an employee in the employee world, you set goals for your company. They set goals for you on what you're going to accomplish for the company. But not very often do we think of goals professionally outside of the company. So this
Right.
taught me that I could set professional goals, um, create a website, create client acquisition, get clients, and then actually be hired.
Yeah.
And it gave me that confidence. I don't think I lacked confidence, but it just reinforced the confidence that
Mm-hmm.
this can be done. It's kind of like you don't know what you don't know. So
Right.
you opened my eyes to something I really just didn't know.
Uh,
And with that, you know, from my old job, people were reaching out to me for the skill sets that I had and wanting to hire me along with copywriting. So some of that consulting is for copywriting, for their fund development, fundraising, that kind of thing. And then some of it's for training. So I've actually been able to also launch a second company called Cultivating Hope Training and Consulting. And I primarily train in areas of trauma-informed care, motivational interviewing, resiliency, that kind of thing. So
I just got chills. That is amazing. And so you've created this like beautiful hybrid business of all of your, the skills and strengths that you had to absolutely just match what you love to do. And I just seriously am so impressed and think that that is like really the goal. That is like my hope for everyone really who decides that they want to bet on themselves and be an entrepreneur. And I don't know, that's like amazing. Do you stop and like celebrate? Or are you the
you
kind of
know,
person who's always
I'm
moving
a
forward?
I'm a goer, but you know, finally this past month, my husband said, you know, I think we should celebrate. So he wanted to go out to eat too, like an all you can eat steakhouse. And I thought, well, that's really your celebration. That's not my kind of celebration. Um, so we're gonna get some friends together and celebrate in the next month or so.
Oh,
Um, but I really didn't stop to think about celebrating until he said something. And I
Mm-hmm.
thought, you know what, we really should celebrate because it's been a lot of work, a lot of seeds that have been planted. And I
Mm-hmm.
do want to say seeds because I think sometimes we think we're going to jump, and it is possible to jump in a couple months into some giant success, but I think the small successes are as important, if not more important, than the large ones.
Mm-hmm.
So I do think, planting those seeds and being very intentional about those seeds are just as important as when you see something flourish. So I just, it was a lot of work, a lot of seed planting, but it's definitely coming to fruition now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that imagery because it's so true. I think it's so easy to forget just how much work goes into creating the life that we want, creating a business, entrepreneurship. But the thing that I keep coming back to is like, life is hard, things are hard. But when you're focusing on, taking all your strengths, making it into the business that you really want it to be to serve you in your life and the people so you can have a big impact. I mean, that's like, it's just, it's the right kind of hard. It's the kind of hard that is like rewarding, fulfilling. And I just love the imagery of the seeds because the thing is it keeps happening. I've been doing the whole entrepreneur thing, building a business for like 10 years, and it's just a new iteration and a new iteration. So I really loved that you touched on that. And I'm so glad to hear that you're celebrating because there is a lot to celebrate. Do you mind sharing with us? Because everybody kind of loves like a day in the life of. Do you mind sharing with us kind of what your days look like or your weeks look like? Just like how much you're working, things like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I um forgot what I was going to say. I from a workaholic mindset,
Yeah.
that's probably the biggest struggle
Mhm.
is if I'm not working, feeling like, I need to work. So that's been my hardest struggle, but I actually like working. So I don't know if that's a struggle or not. But anyways, so as far as copywriting goes for the hours that I put in, well, let me back up a little bit. When I left my full-time job, I
Mhm.
actually put my phone on do not disturb for about 10 months. So people could call and text, only certain people could get through,
Yep.
just in
So
case of
good.
emergency.
Uh-huh.
Um, and that really helped a lot. Kind of, I know that's a long time, but actually,
Mine's been on it for years, so you're good.
oh, there you go then. So that was different because for 12 years, I carried two phones,
Oof. Yeah.
personal and corporate. So it felt very strange, but very liberating to just
Mhm.
kind of keep the phone off or on, but not, attached to it where I had to answer it, 24 hours a day. So
Huge.
that was the first thing I did that liberated my my time.
Hmm.
Um, but then, and I might work for copywriting specifically between 6 and 14 hours a week,
Hmm.
a little bit each day. I don't necessarily my husband works all the time, so usually in the morning I have my morning routines, and then while my energy is really high, I get the work done, and then I can take care of any other projects I want to do or hang out with family, friends, whatever I need to do. But that, unless I'm have a really really full week, but most of the time it's about 6 to 14 hours a week.
Yeah, that's amazing. And do you mind sharing with us a little bit about, I mean, you just had your highest month in September. You mind sharing with us a little bit about that so we can celebrate with you?
Yes, and actually it's a little higher now, but I forgot to write the number down because I just signed another client. So,
Awesome.
and I can't remember the exact number, but as for September, it's over $20,000.
Nice.
So, for this month, and there's still a few days left. So,
I
um,
love that attitude. Yeah.
there's
And
still a
it's
few days.
all a reflection of the work that you're, delivering, the impact you're having on your clients, the things that you're able to help them create, right? You're creating like a really genuine ripple effect through the work that you're doing. And I don't know, I love it. And I love the name of your consulting business so much. Um, do you actually want to touch on some of the like mindset stuff? I know people love to hear about like, how do you approach like mindset work, fear? And it sounds like you just get things done, but surely, some of that stuff comes up for you as well. So anything that you have, any advice for others on that subject, obviously would be so helpful.
Well, I do think mindset is super important because there were some months, especially the beginning of this year, um, people were very frightened, I think, by the recession.
Mhm.
So obviously, I think people who were trying to grow their business might have been frightened, and they might have even, you know, I know I did a lot of discovery calls, and some people didn't sign on because they were scared, and a couple
Mhm.
clients either backed up, decreased the amount of work, or put me on pause for a little while. So I was like, okay, all right. So if I've ever felt like just that I needed a boost, and this is my suggestion to anybody, go back through the success stories.
Mhm.
Because every single person, I don't know how many you have now, but there's a lot.
A lot.
Um, and everybody's a little different. Some are introverts, some are extroverts, some have business experience, some don't. So there's a really good mixture of people with backgrounds that are a good variety that have made it. And it's a good reminder that if they could make it, that you can too. So I would just, as I was cleaning the house or organizing, I'd put a success story on, let it play really loud so I could hear it. And, it would just refresh my memory of like, okay, you know what? That's what they can do. We may or may, some people have similarities and some don't. Like even people on here that are listening may not have the same story as me,
Mhm.
and some might, but just go listen to those success stories, because if they can make it, if somebody completely, with no background can do this, then so can you. And that's what I would do, is it would really remind me that I can do this, keep putting in the work, don't quit.
Yeah, I love that. Something that I noticed when you were talking is you mentioned the fear that came through, hard times, the fear of the recession specifically, and you definitely talked about that in the past tense. And I'm wondering, because as a community, we've gone through like some stuff together, the recession, the pandemic, that was a wild one. I'm curious, what did you learn in navigating that, quote unquote, hard time or time of uncertainty?
I would say a few things. So one, I wasn't in fear. They were in fear, and I'm like, no, you're good. Let's just keep going. And so I wasn't really scared, because I had a lot of trust that, if business slows down in one way because of a recession, that you can pivot a little and find a different way to make income.
Mm-hmm.
One of my skill sets is strategy, and pretty much out of the box thinking. So if one door closes, we're going to sit and talk until we find five more that can open. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so I wasn't frightened for myself necessarily, um, but a lot of people were.
Mm-hmm.
But what I learned was, when things don't work, when business is a little slow, or when you might lose some clients, um, don't take that as a reflection of yourself or
Mm-hmm.
of the economy as a whole,
Mm-hmm.
because sometimes people just get scared. And it might be a small group of people. Sometimes we get scared because other people get scared. We take on their fear. Um,
Right.
there, I always kind of say, like, acquiring business is like casting a net. When you cast, we used to go fishing when I was little. So we would cast the net to catch the bait fish. And you'd catch all kind of fish in that net. And you just keep casting that net. But if you don't cast, you're not going to catch.
Yep.
So that's one of the things I learned is if you're trying to reach out to two people and not getting any clients, then you need to cast your net bigger,
Hmm.
because there's how many people in this world? 8 billion.
Hmm.
There's a
Hmm.
lot of clients out there. There's a lot of fish
Yeah.
out there. So, I always say just cast the net. Don't be afraid of a closed door, because where one, I know this is cliche, but where one closes, there are more that open that are actually better suited for you.
100%. I so agree with that. These are all really important reminders. Thank you. I mean, it's so everything that you're touching on is so it's stuff that we all go through. And it happens again and again, even it's bigger and scarier when you're first starting out, but every time you get a client, you do a project, you send an invoice, like your confidence just grows a little bit more each time. And so it's just like the best reminder.
Yeah. And I want to say one more thing about fear.
Yeah.
I think we should use that fear for our advantage. I kind of use the scenario sink or swim.
Hmm.
If somebody throws you in the water and you don't know how to swim, I don't know if any of us are just going to put our hands down and say, okay, well, I don't know how to swim, right? Well, use the fear to your advantage. Throw yourself in the water. And I'm
Right.
hoping that we have what it takes to flail about until we can figure out a rhythm. Use the fear, because fear can be healthy as long as it's not paralyzing. But
Hmm.
put yourself in positions to where you have to deliver, where you have to do something, where you have to sink or swim, because it's just not in us to sink.
Oh
So
gosh, I love that. It's so true. It's so true. And even when you have situations where I don't know, we quote unquote fail. I don't really believe it's failing because I think it's just a closed door that's showing you another open door. Um, it just informs like our processes and we learn from it and then we get stronger. And I'm sure, have you experienced that? Things that you were like, oh man, like that didn't go according to what I thought was going to work, but it just kind of pointed you in the right direction.
yeah, actually, you weren't in Florida at the time of last year's hurricane, I don't think. But
Mm-mm.
this time last year, I was getting packed to head to a conference as for the first time for my business. And I had a booth and everything, and I had ordered all of this stuff, a sign, all, pens, the whole thing. Thinking I was going to walk away with like 50 clients, right? That I was going to have to start hiring people to help. And the hurricane canceled my flight.
Oh,
And I thought, okay, so I had put all of my eggs kind of in that basket. Well, I'd put all of my mental eggs in
yeah.
that basket, really kind of pumping up for that conference. But right behind it, another door opened for another conference for training. So the flight got canceled for the copywriting, but the flight didn't get canceled for the training. So it just kind of worked out, like at first I was discouraged for like a second, and then I was like, well, whatever, let's get on this flight. They have electricity over there because the hurricane had hit and we didn't have electricity here. So I thought, let's just go where the electricity is and see what happens. So
Oh my gosh, that is a wild story. And now you look back and do you think I see why that had to happen? You
yeah,
know?
I do, because sometimes we think, I think it's just natural that
Mhm.
we're going to do this thing and we're going to do it this way, and this is what's going to happen. But
Mhm.
that's not life. Life, you have to be flexible. And if it doesn't quite work out in the way you thought it would, then just start looking around, because something else is gonna work out. I always laugh because I'm not good with directions in the car
Mhm.
at all, but I've driven all over the state. And my previous coworkers would say, how do you get anywhere? Because you have such terrible sense of direction. And I always say, well, all roads lead somewhere. We're going to get somewhere. So not that I don't think we should have direction and be headed somewhere, but I don't think we should get discouraged if we get a little off course, because there's a door there too. You know,
Yeah.
if we stopped every time we hit a bump in the road, we wouldn't get anywhere. So
Yeah.
that's just kind of my take on it. Just keep going, look around, and if you have to go left when you thought you were going to go right, then go left, see what's through that door.
Oh my gosh. It's so true. You have like the most beautiful metaphors. I've been looking forward to speaking to you for months. And I'm just so glad we finally got to catch up. I'd love to wrap up with, if you could go back in time and chat with yourself when you were thinking about joining Write Your Way to Freedom, thinking about, the potential shift you were considering making into entrepreneurship, and you could have a conversation with Hope back then. What would you say to her back then?
I would say just do it. Go for
Yeah.
it. I mean, I did do it, but I would just say, go for it. Do it. Um, and don't look back, because it's really, I was just telling my previous boss, my previous employers, the organization, I actually now have about 5 or 6 contracts with them.
Oh.
So I'm making probably a little more than half of my previous salary, with not even being employed by them, but contracted, because they have a lot of contracts throughout the United States. But I was talking to my previous boss, and I even said to her, I said, can you imagine we'd be talking about entrepreneurship a couple years ago? Because I was talking to her about the business and how it's going. So if I could go back to 2 years ago when I was looking up your class and looking up copywriting, I would just say, listen, it's going to blow your mind what you're going to receive in this class and what you're going to be able to do from it. And I don't know. That's what I would tell anybody else too, is just, if you're contemplating diving into Write Your Way to Freedom, or if you've already bought Write Your Way to Freedom, just do it and keep going, because a year from now, 6 months from now, or 2 years from now, if you put the work in, if you're consistent and don't give up, then you're going to be holding something in your hands that no employer anywhere really could give you, unless they're just a really great employer. But it's something you can give yourself. This is the gift you're giving your future self.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much. Uh, Now we get to add your story, your student success story, to the list that people can listen to when they're, doing things around the house, feeling needing a little bit of inspiration. And I'm just so grateful for you, Hope. You're such an inspiration in the community. I love that you keep tapping in and sharing your wins with us. It's been so exciting to see you grow. And again, I just admire and respect how you've created like this beautiful hybrid business that includes all of your like favorite things. So,
Well, thank you. And thank you for starting Write Your Way to Freedom. I know I've heard many people say this, like that you changed their life. And I don't know what you were thinking back when you started, necessarily. If you
not
could go
this.
back
I
and
had no idea.
right,
No
if you could go
idea.
back and talk to Sarah back then, maybe we should ask you that question, right? But, you know, thank you, because you are able to change your life, but now I don't know how many students you have, over 5,000.
Mhm.
That's a lot of lives that are being changed. So I just want to say thank you.
Thank you so much. Getting a little teary eyed over here. Thank you, Hope.
Oh.
I received that, and I thank you. It's I had no idea. Let's just say that back then, Sarah 5 years ago had no idea. I just had this desire for people to know that there was so much more waiting for them outside the 9 to 5. And I would stop people on the streets, our poor servers at dinner. I would be like, you can start a business. And I
You
needed
don't
to
have
find
to
a
wait
place.
tables.
Yeah. Well, I was living in LA, so a lot of them really wanted to be actors, and they were doing this on
Oh,
the side. And I was like, start a business on the side.
yeah, I do that with my Uber drivers.
Yeah. Oh gosh, so many Uber drivers have been on the receiving end of that. So it's nice to finally have a community that really is an outlet for that kind of energy. So, well, thank you. Thank you again, Hope. Seriously. And I cannot wait to see what's next for you. And thank you all for being here. And I'll see you guys in the community. Thanks.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.